If you guys are having a hard time getting your bird to fly in new areas, check this out. Today we're working with Tony and his beautiful Eclectus parrot Jellybean. Now, we're set up for success here because she's on the right diet, which means that we can use treats as a reinforcer that we know is going to be high value because there's no junk and no filler in the diet. To begin, I just wanted to see what Jellybean was willing to do. And like most Eckies, she took 5.5 minutes to consume 1 safflower seed. Nice. And what was that treat?
I think it was a safflower.
Safflower, okay.
There's safflower seeds, sunflower seeds, walnuts, and nuts in here.
Cool.
Nice.
And she's the world's slowest cat.
She's necky.
I know in Australia, it seemed like we had Eclectus parrots, at least one every class. At the time, we still have 4 birds in.
It was like 3 out of 4 would be Eckies.
And it was like the reps per hour went down on that tour because of all the Eclectus parrots. They eat so slowly, yeah. By realizing that this species' tendency is to eat treats very slowly, we wanted to make sure that we were taking that into consideration and we weren't trying to go for a really long session. In fact, we were trying to just get 5 repetitions of something.
Come on.
Can I see how far back, just keep walking back. I just want to watch if her body language changes and what it looks like. She definitely looks inquisitive about why are you so far back?
Yeah, she seemed to start getting interested right about here.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing about that, I showed the little pyramid of food, water, and shelter. And even though this is an unknown, all of a sudden this is still comforting. Whereas that's just too far and they might fly, right? So it's interesting how when you look at the environment, just where we stand can make a huge difference. Like if Janie stands too close behind with the camera, it might make this just uncomfortable enough that if you give a recall cue.
Jellybean, come here.
Although her focus is on me.
Yeah, she's.
What's that thing in my face? I'm ready for my close-up.
Literally pretty.
So for a lot of birds, that would be enough, like we'll call pressure, where this is now not a known environment or shelter, and she'll want to seek what she knows, which would be you. So this is really interesting. Do you want to try anything up close that she may or may not, like whatever she might be likely to do, other than target? I definitely have seen that.
Can we turn around? Turn around? Yeah, we haven't worked on that for a while. Most of what we do at home is flying. I can try to fly her to that stand. She might fly to that.
Yeah, let me just wipe it down real quick. I try to keep.
Tony's
goal was to be able to show me what the recall looks like because his end goal is he wants to have this bird free flight trained outside. Again, being in a new area, like many different birds that we work with in our classes, they react differently in this area than they would at home. So, whenever you're having a challenge with your bird, make sure that you take this phrase into consideration. If you're experiencing failure, you pushed too far too fast. Go back to where it was last working well and slowly rebuild it from there. This applies for so many different scenarios, especially when you're in a new location. Since Jellybean hadn't been in this spot, she was very hesitant to do what she was great at doing at home, so we pushed too far too fast. We have to go back to where we know we're going to have success and rebuild that. We did struggle with having her fly from her T-stand, and the reason for this is likely that there's so much reinforcement history, meaning she's been paid with rewards and reinforcement on this T-stand that she knows that's her safe place in this otherwise very intimidating environment.
Jellybean. You come here.
Would you want to try from the flat tabletopper maybe?
Yeah, we can try that. So we changed it to where she was on a flat tabletop that was not a fearful item to be on. There was no history there of being able to eat the treat on this particular table. Our first repetition, we wanted to start with what we thought was going to be most likely to succeed. So since we knew that she likes to target and is receptive to targeting, we put her on the unfamiliar tabletopper and had her target and fly over to the T-stand that she already knows and finds very reinforcing. We did that and were able to give a treat right away.
Come on. There you go. Come on. There you go. Come on.
Nice. Cool. So the reasons that worked, we talked about shelter. When you disrupt the shelter, meaning something now is slightly uncomfortable, she has no reinforcement history on that little flat tabletop. You could tell visibly she was not like, this is great, right? So now that's a little uncomfortable. She's more willing to go to what she knows that is going to be where treats come from. And then it was just a matter of finding the distance, and obviously that worked. So what I'd love to do is reset that behavior, and then we'll click when she does do it. And just for everybody else, you know, heard me say like, hey, don't click for this, was because we were asking, we were begging, we were prompting, we were doing so many things, and we eventually got the behavior, so let's pay it. But we don't want to click and take a picture that we'd frame because it wasn't really quite what we want. It took a lot of begging. And yeah, if we get what we just got or better, let's click for it.
Okay.
If it takes longer, then let's maybe not click for it. I do want to highlight too that Tony did something intuitively that I really appreciated. The goal was to get his bird to fly from point A to point B, but he didn't have Jellybean also have a requirement of going, now that she had landed on this T-stand, having to also target the target stick. The target stick in this case was used to get the flight and to initiate it, but he was clicking right when she landed, which was perfect. We don't need her to fly and land on the T-stand and add another behavior of come over and touch a target stick. So to simplify it, we use a target to show where we want the bird to fly, and then click and reinforce when she lands on that particular stand. This looks clickable. Yeah, nice.
Girl.
And your timing was awesome. He clicked the moment the feet touched. Did you also notice he didn't make the new criteria to land and touch the target? What we wanted was just landing where he said, go here. So we got that behavior, capturing and clicking for the exact moment of the feet touching. That was awesome timing. A lot of people make the mistake of like, okay, you flew here, but now come on, touch the stick, touch the stick, touch the stick. And it's like, the bird just did what we wanted. So we don't need the stick. The stick is great for like directing, since we know they know to touch the stick. Cool, come over here. But what we're really saying is, okay, now that you're here, just take the pay early. You don't need this extra behavior, which in turn, talking about FR2 and 3, is like an FR2 because we got the flight and now we're asking for touching the stick when it's really not necessary at that point.
Honestly, when you asked me to target her to warm her up, I was afraid she wouldn't do it. Because at home, I skipped that step because she's so comfortable flying at home that we just practice flying from stand to stand, and targeting's kind of fallen by the wayside. So I was glad she did it.
Yeah, that looked great. So I would say, since this is working, let's try to get in a few more reps. Since we knew we weren't going to have a lot of repetitions with Jellybean, the next step was to get her to fly to Toadie's hand.
You gonna try a recall from the table?
Sure.
That was slow.
Let's move this so that's not a...
Oh, wait a second. Come here.
Did you usually use it?
Come here.
Yeah, let's take the opportunity away. So there's a great lesson here too. A lot of times as humans, our nature is to push through, and we're like begging for them to do the behavior. And then oftentimes we just don't allow a failure moment.
Right.
And that's where they process and they learn. If we constantly say like, okay, here it is, and then we lessen the criteria, and we're like, oh, we just step up, oh, click, here's a treat. Then the bird learns like, cool, I just sit here, I do nothing, and I eventually get the same treat that I would have got if I had to fly really far, and then I have to land. I'm not really wanting to do that, I'm not very comfortable, I still get the same treat. We lessen the criteria to where they're like, oh, I'll just wait, we'll treat it. During these flights, we noticed that there was one very common problem, and that was there were more than one common problem. He was cueing too much verbally, and we had to adjust where he was standing to set us up for the most likely chance of the flight. But also, his hand was out for so long that it was losing the value of the cue being that precise moment, and the cue is prolonged by having that hand up for too long. Nice, clear timing. Awesome. So now we have some more data sets, right? We don't necessarily need the target. Your body language, your distance, your handling up, all that's really become the cue. And I don't think you'll need the target. So we can start just using this as a cue. You gave 2 verbal cues, and you gave one other cue. Do you know what it was?
My body language.
Yeah, so yeah, your body language, your hand. Now, your hand was up for a really long time. So if I was going to have her step up. And I said, step up, step up, step up, step up, step up, step up, step, and she's still not stepping up. I'm weakening my cue, right? And the same thing is happening with having her hand out for too long. The cue now is come whenever you want, my hand will be here at any time. So what we want to start to switch towards is saying, okay, this distance, ooh, right there, she looks like she's interested. Let's wait her out, wait for her body language, maybe touch the treat bag so she's more interested. And right when she ducks, then give the cue. So that's the goal, right? We might have to have her hand up a little longer. We might have to prompt a couple of times, but the goal is that the cue is really, really brief and quick. On the next repetition, we made sure that there was enough distance where Jellybean was most likely to fly to him. And then we tried to make it to where he didn't have his hand up for so long and he was starting to call vocally a lot less.
So I would say some of the indications that showed us last time that she was interested, which she would kind of like crouch down a little bit, and she almost always walked to the end. So I would almost try to get those behaviors first before calling. Does that make sense? Because you see the receptiveness of her going to the edge, being like, oh yeah, that.
Call.
Come here. Come here.
Yeah.
I was watching your hands.
Did you guys all see those two behaviors that I just listed, showing that she's really receptive to flying? So you really want to place your cue around that when you get those first two, just to show you like, yeah, I'm interested in coming to you, and then cue, and that'll keep the power in your cue. Versus you cueing when she's at the very back, she still has to do those two behaviors first, so you know you're gonna have a hesitation of time.
Another thing that Tony had mentioned is he wanted to clean up his handling in the effort of trying to reach this goal of outdoor free flight. And something that I'm huge on is really making sure that we're catching the birds on our hand in this direction. The reason for that is we do want to have the ability eventually, when the bird's comfortable with it, of placing our thumb on its foot. There's a lot of reasons for this that don't include restraining the bird. That is not the intention behind that. But for whatever reason, Jellybean was more comfortable landing on his arm and didn't want to land on his hand, according to Tony. So I tried to kind of game plan this a little bit, and I said, you know, if it was just me, I would just catch her on the hand and give her a treat there. And so that's what happened. She flew to his hand. He was able to give a heavy reinforcement, but he was very careful to not accidentally add punishment of putting his finger or his thumb on her foot. Now, I don't know if she would have perceived that as punishing, but knowing that it could be perceived as punishment, we made sure to avoid that altogether. Let's try a cue. Nice. You're good.
That was a great catch though, look at that. She's perfectly on your hand.
And I love that you didn't add accidental punishment by touching her feet. Some birds hate that. One of the reasons that we went straight to having her fly just straight to his hand, although he thought she needed to land on his arm, is that while he was explaining things to me off camera, you would oftentimes see that she was just standing on his hand. So I knew that she didn't have a fear of being on his hand, whereas a lot of birds will avoid the hand and run straight up to the shoulder. She would sit pretty comfortably. So given that background, I was able to say, let's just push forward and catch her on your hand. Something that Tony did rather naturally is he could feel and sense when there was that little note in his head saying, that was great, let's do one more. And he knew enough from our videos to say, okay, we need to stop there. And I really appreciated that, because we don't want to push her to failure and then what? We don't have any value left to be able to get her to fly to us. She may not be reinforced by using a treat at that point, and then we might be accidentally punishing. But he avoided all of that by just simply saying, hey, that was awesome, we're ending it there. I'm super excited because Tony has actually booked us for an in-home a few months from this recording, so I cannot wait to see the progression that he makes with his birds, in fact, all of his birds, between now and the time we see him in his house. We'll make sure to give you guys the update in another video.